My daughter-in-law and her mother planned my nursing home placement at my wife's funeral. I'm Troy Walsh. 8 months after losing Catherine, I discovered what my family really thought of me. They whispered about care facilities while I stood 10 feet away at the memorial service. Ashley nodded as her mother Victoria discussed my financial limitations and cognitive decline. My own son Daniel just listened silently, not defending me once. They assumed grief had made me helpless. They had no idea I owned every property they lived in. For months, they treated me like a burden. Victoria publicly questioned my mental competence. Ashley suggested I couldn't handle basic decisions. Daniel started avoiding our weekly coffee dates because his wife found me embarrassing. They planned my institutionalization without my consent, made reservations at facilities, discussed my transition needs with medical professionals. But here's what they didn't know. I built a $400 million empire. I own their homes, control their careers, and hold the power to change their lives forever. What happened when I finally revealed the truth? Well, let's just say some people learned that underestimating a grieving father was the biggest mistake of their lives. I'd love to have you along for this story. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. Because sometimes the quiet ones hold all the cards. The signs started small, but they were unmistakable. 2 weeks after Catherine's memorial, Victoria made her first move. I was wearing my usual cardigan and khakis when they came for Sunday dinner. She looked me up and down and said, "Troy, have you considered updating your wardrobe? Grief shopping might help." Ashley nodded enthusiastically. "Mom's right, Dad Walsh. Maybe something more contemporary?" My son Daniel avoided eye contact. He'd been doing that a lot lately. Victoria continued her assessment. "This house is really too much for you now, don't you think? All these stairs, the yard maintenance. At your age, after such a loss." I served them pot roast on Catherine's good china. The same china Victoria had complimented just a year ago. Now she barely touched her food, probably worried about eating off old dishes. "The utilities alone must be crushing," Ashley added. "And property taxes in this neighborhood. You're probably on a fixed income now, right?" I let them talk. They assumed my silence meant agreement. The second sign came 3 days later. Daniel called to cancel our weekly coffee. "Ashley thinks I should focus more on my career right now," he said. "You understand, don't you, Dad?" I understood perfectly. The next Sunday, Victoria arrived with printed materials. Brochures for senior living communities, budget worksheets, and something called Transitional Living Options for Fixed Income Seniors. "I've done some research," she announced, spreading the papers across my kitchen table. "There are some very nice, affordable places. Nothing fancy, but clean and safe." Ashley picked up a brochure for Sunset Gardens. "This one looks perfect. It's only $1,200 a month, and they have activities." Only $1,200. They had no idea I owned Sunset Gardens. Victoria leaned forward. "Troy, the reality is that maintaining independence becomes harder as we age, especially after losing a spouse. There's no shame in accepting help." Her tone was the one people use with children. "Some people adjust better than others," Ashley added. "And some people, well, they get stuck in the past." I asked what they meant by stuck. "Oh, you know," Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "Keeping all of Catherine's things, talking about her constantly, refusing to move forward. It's not healthy." Ashley nodded. "Dr. Morgan says prolonged grief can affect decision-making, maybe impair judgment." Dr. Morgan was Victoria's friend from book club, not a mental health professional. "Have you given any thought to your will?" Victoria asked suddenly. "Estate planning becomes so important at your stage of life, especially when cognitive changes might be starting." There it was, the real concern. I told them I appreciated their worry, but I was managing fine. "Of course you think you are," Victoria smiled. "But families need to look out for each other. That's what Catherine would want." "Don't use her name." But I stayed calm. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "Well," Victoria glanced at Ashley. "Daniel has been working so hard at the hospital. He and Ashley have been talking about starting a family. Maybe it's time to think about what's best for everyone." Ashley jumped in. "We're not saying you can't live independently. We're just saying maybe you need more support. Someone to help with decisions." Support, decisions. Code words for control. That evening, after they left, I sat in Catherine's chair and looked at their brochures. Sunset Gardens stared back at me from the glossy cover. The facility I'd built and owned for 15 years. They wanted to put me in my own property and charge me rent. I called Margaret O'Brien, my facility director. "Margaret, I need you to run some numbers for me." "Of course, Mr. Walsh. What kind of numbers?" "I want to know exactly what my son's family has been paying for their housing, their cars, everything. And I want to know who holds their mortgages. Because if they thought I was vulnerable, they hadn't been paying attention for the past 40 years. If I stayed silent, I'd lose everything that mattered, not money. I had more money than they could imagine. I'd lose something far more valuable, the relationship with my son that Catherine and I had spent 32 years building. Daniel was pulling away, and I could measure the distance in concrete terms. Our weekly coffee meetings had turned into monthly phone calls. Those phone calls had shrunk from hour-long conversations to 15-minute check-ins dominated by Ashley's schedule updates. Last month he missed Catherine's birthday. We'd visited her grave together every year since she passed. This year he texted, "Sorry, Dad, Ashley has a work thing. Rain check?" There was no rain check. The family dinners told the real story. In June, right after the memorial, Daniel still defended me when Victoria made her comments. "Mom Sterling, Dad's been through a lot. Give him time." By July, he was neutral. "Dad does seem a little overwhelmed lately." By August, he was agreeing. Maybe Mom's right about getting more help. Now, in September, he initiated the conversations. "Dad, have you looked at those brochures Mom Sterling brought? Some of those places look really nice." Ashley's eye-rolling had become constant. Every time I mentioned Catherine, every time I shared a memory, every time I expressed an opinion about anything, Ashley would glance at Victoria with that look. The look that said, "See, we told you." Yesterday, Daniel called with news. "Ashley's pregnant, Dad. We're having a baby." I should have been the first person he told. Instead, I was the last. Victoria and Dr. Sterling had known for weeks. They'd been planning nursery designs and discussing private schools. "That's wonderful, son. Congratulations." "Thanks, Dad. So, we've been talking about the future, about what kind of environment we want for the baby." Here it comes. "Ashley thinks maybe it would be good if you were closer to us, in case we need help with babysitting, and in case you need help with anything." Help. That word again. "What kind of help are you thinking?" "Well, you're 77 now. I'm 67, but I didn't correct him. Let me see how far this goes. And Ashley found this great place. It's got assisted living options, but also independent units. You could start independent and transition as needed." "Transition as needed? Into what? Have you visited this place?" "Not yet, but Ashley's mom knows the director. She says it's really well run. Victoria knows Margaret O'Brien because Victoria's been trying to get her husband a consulting contract with my facility for 3 years. I've been saying no." "What about this house?" "Well, that's the thing, Dad. Ashley thinks we should look into selling it. The market's really good right now, and the money could help with your care costs." "Care costs? For a facility I own." "And Daniel, what do you think?" Long pause. I think maybe they're right, Dad. Maybe it's time." That night, I walked through the house Catherine and I shared for 38 years. Her book was still on the nightstand. Bookmark at page 247. Her reading glasses were still on the kitchen counter next to her crossword puzzle book. Her coffee mug, the one that said "World's Best Grandma to Be," was still in the dish drainer. She never got to be a grandma. Cancer took her before Daniel and Ashley started trying. I picked up her mug and realized what I was really losing. It wasn't just my relationship with Daniel. It was the future Catherine had dreamed about. She'd wanted to spoil grandchildren, to pass down her recipes, to share the stories about Daniel's childhood. If they succeeded in marginalizing me, those stories would die with me. Her voice would be forgotten. Her influence on this family would be erased. In the morning, I called my attorney. "James, I need you to prepare some documents for me." "What kind of documents, Troy?" "Property ownership records." "All of them. And I need contact information for everyone who owes me money, starting with the Sterling family." "Troy, what's going on?" I told him about the brochures, the conversations, the care facility plans. "Jesus, Troy, they have no idea, do they?" "None whatsoever." "And James,
I want you to call Margaret O'Brien and schedule a facility inspection. Tell her to bring the ownership papers, all of them. When do you want this inspection? October 3rd. Victoria Sterling is hosting a dinner party that night. Medical professionals from the hospital. I think it's time they met the real owner of Sunset Gardens, because if they wanted to plan my future, they should probably know who actually controls theirs. The confrontation started over Catherine's wedding ring. I was still wearing my ring. Catherine had been gone 8 months, but I wasn't ready to take it off. Victoria had different ideas. Troy, you're making people uncomfortable.
What people? Well, Ashley for one. It's not healthy to cling to symbols. It's my ring, Victoria. But what message does it send to potential companions? Potential what? Ashley jumped in. Dad Walsh, Mom's just saying you might want to start thinking about moving forward. I am moving forward. Are you, though? Victoria's tone sharpened. You haven't changed anything in this house. Catherine's clothes are still in the closet. Her medication is still in the bathroom. Those are my decisions to make. But are they good decisions? Ashley leaned forward. Dr. Morgan says, Dr. Morgan isn't my doctor. No, but she understands grief psychology. Victoria pulled out her phone. I could give you her number. I don't need her number. Troy, you can't live in the past forever. I'm not living in the past. Then why haven't you cleaned out her closet? Because it's been 8 months, not 8 years. Some people adjust better than others, Ashley said. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing negative, just that everyone processes loss differently. Victoria nodded. And some people need more support than others. What kind of support? Professional guidance, structured environment, social interaction with peers. You mean a nursing home. Not a nursing home, assisted living. There's a difference. Is there? Of course, assisted living is for people who need help with daily tasks. What tasks can't I handle? Ashley counted on her fingers. Yard work, house maintenance, meal planning, financial management. I manage my finances fine. Do you, though? Victoria pulled out a folder. I've done some research. Fixed incomes can be tricky. Social Security plus whatever pension you have. I let them assume. And this house, Ashley gestured around, property taxes alone must be killing you. How much do you think I pay in property taxes? Well, Victoria consulted her folder. Homes in this neighborhood, probably 8 to 10,000 annually. Try 26,000. And I own 12 other properties in this neighborhood. That's a lot of money, I agreed. Exactly. Ashley looked relieved. That's like $700 a month just in taxes. Plus utilities, Victoria added. Electric, gas, water, garbage, probably another $300 monthly. Insurance, Ashley continued the list. Homeowner's automobile, health supplements that Medicare doesn't cover. They'd rehearsed this. How much do you think it costs me to live here monthly? Victoria flipped through her papers. Based on our calculations, probably $2,500 to $3,000. And you think I can't afford that? Troy, there's no shame in admitting financial stress. Who said I was financially stressed? Well, Ashley gestured vaguely, you don't exactly live extravagantly. What would extravagant look like? New car, Victoria said immediately. Yours is 10 years old. Vacations, Ashley added. When's the last time you traveled? Updated wardrobe, home improvements, entertainment. They were describing their lifestyle, not mine. Maybe I prefer living simply. Or maybe you can't afford more, Victoria said gently. And there's nothing wrong with that, Ashley rushed to add. Lots of seniors face financial constraints. But it doesn't have to control your life, Victoria continued. There are solutions, such as downsizing, reducing overhead, finding housing that matches your budget. Like Sunset Gardens? Exactly. $1,200 monthly includes everything. Meals, utilities, activities, transportation. And if I need more care later? They have levels, Ashley said. You'd just transition up as needed. Who decides when I need to transition? Medical professionals, social workers, family members. Family members. Well, Daniel would be involved in those decisions. Would I be involved? Victoria and Ashley exchanged glances. Of course, Victoria said, but sometimes cognitive changes make self-assessment difficult. Are you suggesting I have cognitive changes? Not yet, Ashley said quickly, but it's something to monitor. Who would monitor it? The facility staff. They're trained to notice signs. What kind of signs? Confusion, memory issues, poor judgment, financial vulnerability. And if they noticed these signs, they'd contact family members, Victoria explained, for safety. My safety or your peace of mind? Both, Ashley said. We just want what's best for everyone. Everyone. You, us, the baby when it comes. There it was. The baby trumped everything. What does the baby have to do with where I live? Stability, Victoria said. Children need stable, predictable family structures. And I'm unstable? Not unstable, just unpredictable. In what way? Troy, you're grieving. Grief affects decision-making. It affects priorities. My priorities seem fine to me. But what if they change? What if you become dependent? What if you need emergency help? Then you'd help me. Of course, but what if we can't? What if Daniel's at work? What if Ashley's dealing with the baby? Then I'd call emergency services. From where? This big house where you could fall and lie undiscovered for days? Victoria had painted a picture. Me, alone, helpless, forgotten. I see you've thought this through. We have to think ahead, Ashley said, for everyone's sake. I nodded slowly. That's very thoughtful. They relaxed, thinking they'd won. But Victoria's next comment changed everything. The good news is that we've already spoken to Margaret O'Brien at Sunset Gardens. She's holding a spot for you. Without my permission, without my knowledge. She's holding a spot? Just temporarily, Ashley said, until you're ready to visit. And when did you speak to Margaret? Last week, Victoria said proudly. She's very understanding about family situations like this. Margaret O'Brien, my employee, taking reservations for her boss. This was about to get interesting. The first hint came during their property tax lecture. My phone rang while Victoria was explaining why homeownership had become unrealistic for someone in my position. The caller ID showed M. O'Brien, director. Excuse me, I said. I should take this. Victoria frowned. Troy, we're in the middle of an important conversation. It'll just take a moment. I stepped into the kitchen, but kept my voice loud enough for them to hear. Hello, Margaret. Mr. Walsh, I have the facility inspection report you requested. Should I email it to your office or the house? The house is fine. How did the elevator upgrades look? Excellent. The contractor says we're ahead of schedule and under budget. Will you want to review the invoices before I authorize final payment? Just make sure the warranty documentation is complete. We've discussed this before. Of course. And sir? About the family that called last week asking about reservations? I glanced toward the living room where Victoria and Ashley were whispering. What family? A Mrs. Sterling? She said her father-in-law might be interested in our independent living units. I told her we'd need to meet with him directly, but she seemed to think she could handle the arrangements. Did she now? Should I call her back? She left her number. No, Margaret. I'll handle Mrs. Sterling myself. Very good, sir. Will I see you at the board meeting Thursday? Wouldn't miss it. I hung up and returned to the living room. Victoria and Ashley had stopped whispering, but their expressions were curious. Everything okay? Ashley asked. Just business. Business. Victoria's eyebrows rose. What kind of business? Property management. Nothing exciting. Property management, Victoria repeated. Are you working, Troy? Consulting part-time. At your age? Some of us enjoy staying busy. Ashley leaned forward. What kind of property management? Commercial real estate mostly. A few residential projects. That sounds complicated, Victoria said. Don't you find it stressful? Not particularly. But the responsibility, Ashley pressed. What if you make a mistake? What if you forget something important? Then I deal with the consequences. But Troy, Victoria's tone was patronizing again. In your situation, you can't afford mistakes. Financial errors could be devastating. If only she knew. The second hint came 2 days later. I was checking my mail when a delivery truck pulled up. The driver carried an envelope marked Walsh Medical Technologies Board Documents. Victoria happened to be visiting. She'd started dropping by unannounced to check on me. What's that? She asked, eyeing the envelope. Board materials. Board materials for what? Medical technology company. I serve on their board. You're on a corporate board? Advisory position. Nothing strenuous. Victoria's expression shifted. What kind of medical technology? Equipment manufacturing, hospital supplies. Do you get paid for this board position? Modest stipend. How modest?
Enough to help with expenses. Ashley arrived as I was signing the delivery receipt. "What's that?" she asked immediately. Victoria answered, "Troy's apparently on some corporate board." "A corporate board?" Ashley's voice pitched higher. "What company?" "Walsh Medical Technologies," I said, because honesty is always the best policy. "Walsh?" Ashley repeated.
Same last name as yours? Coincidence. Victoria was studying the envelope. This envelope says board chairman under your name. Does it? I hadn't noticed. Board chairman is more than advisory, Ashley said slowly. They probably just made a printing error. But I could see the wheels turning in their heads. Board chairman, medical technology, hospital supplies. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. "Everything okay?" I asked. "It's Richard. Something about equipment contracts at the hospital. He seems stressed. Dr. Richard Sterling, Victoria's husband, department head at Riverside Medical Center. The same Riverside Medical Center that had been using Walsh Medical Technologies equipment for the past 8 years. Equipment worth approximately $89 million annually. Hospital equipment can be complicated," I said sympathetically. "Richard says their current supplier is being difficult about contract renewals. That's unfortunate. He's worried about disruptions to patient care. Equipment disruptions can be serious." Victoria was still staring at the envelope in my hands. "Troy, what exactly does Walsh Medical Technologies manufacture?" "Hospital equipment mostly. Diagnostic machines, monitoring systems, surgical tools. And you're on their board?" "Chairman, according to that envelope." Ashley and Victoria exchanged a long look. "Troy," Victoria said carefully, "exactly how big is this company?" But before I could answer, my phone rang again. Margaret O'Brien was calling back. Perfect timing. The country club dinner was Victoria's masterstroke. She'd planned it perfectly. October 3rd, Lakeside Medical Professionals Club, 43 guests from Riverside Medical Center, department heads, board members, senior staff, and their families. "Troy, you simply must come," she'd insisted. "Richard's being honored for his 20 years of service. It would mean so much to have family there. Family. When it served their purposes." I arrived at 7 sharp, wearing my best cardigan and khakis, the same outfit that had prompted Victoria's wardrobe update suggestions. I wanted to look exactly as poor and outdated as they expected. The valet looked confused when I handed him my 2015 Honda Accord keys. Most guests had arrived in BMWs, Mercedes, and Teslas. "Sir, are you sure you want valet service? There's self-parking." "Valet's fine, son." The club dining room sparkled with crystal and silverware. Victoria had reserved a round table for 8, strategically positioned in the center of the room. Maximum visibility for whatever she had planned. Dr. Richard Sterling stood as I approached. "Troy, so glad you could make it." He meant it. Richard was a good man who genuinely cared about his patients. Unfortunately, he'd married a woman who cared more about appearances. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, taking my assigned seat between Ashley and a woman introduced as Dr. Sarah Chen, Chief of Cardiology. "Dr. Chen," Victoria announced loudly. "This is Troy Walsh, Daniel's father. Troy's been having such an interesting time adjusting to retirement." The word adjusting carried weight. Everyone at the table understood the code. Dr. Chen smiled politely. "What did you do before retirement, Mr. Walsh?" "Construction work, mostly." It wasn't a lie. I'd started in construction 40 years ago. "How nice," Dr. Chen said. "My father was in construction too. Hard work." Victoria jumped in. "Yes, Troy's had quite a physical career. Takes a toll on the body over time." Ashley nodded sympathetically. "Dad Walsh has been dealing with some challenges since his wife passed." "I'm sorry for your loss," Dr. Chen said genuinely. "Thank you. Catherine was a wonderful woman." "She was," Victoria agreed, "which is why it's so important that Troy gets the support he needs during this transition." Transition. That word again. The appetizer course provided Victoria's opening. "You know," she said to the table, "we've been discussing living arrangements for Troy. It's such a difficult topic for families." Dr. Martinez, Chief of Internal Medicine, looked up from his salad. "Living arrangements?" "Independence versus safety," Victoria explained. "It's always a delicate balance with aging family members." "I'm sitting right here," I said mildly. "Of course you are, dear." Victoria patted my hand. "But sometimes it helps to get professional perspectives." Ashley leaned toward Dr. Chen. "What would you recommend for someone who's struggling with daily tasks after a significant loss?" Dr. Chen glanced at me uncertainly. Well, that would depend on the specific challenges. Oh, the usual, Victoria waved dismissively. Property maintenance, financial management, social isolation. Social isolation can be serious, Dr. Martinez agreed. Exactly. Victoria's voice rose. Which is why we've been looking at assisted living options. The entire table was now listening. Assisted living? Dr. Chen asked. There's a lovely facility called Sunset Gardens, Ashley said. Very well managed, excellent staff. I know Sunset Gardens, Dr. Martinez said. They have an excellent reputation. The director is Margaret O'Brien, Victoria continued. Such a professional woman. She's been very helpful with our family situation. Our family situation. Like I was a problem to be solved. The wonderful thing about Sunset Gardens, Ashley added, is that they handle everything. Meals, housekeeping, medication management, social activities. Medication management? Dr. Chen looked at me with concern. Well, Victoria glanced around the table. Troy sometimes forgets things. Nothing serious yet, but we want to be proactive. I don't forget my medications, I said quietly. Of course not, dear. But wouldn't it be nice not to worry about it? The main course arrived, but conversation continued. The financial aspect is really the biggest relief, Victoria announced. Fixed monthly costs, no unexpected expenses. Dr. Sterling looked uncomfortable. Victoria, maybe this isn't the right venue. Oh, Richard, these are all medical professionals. They understand these situations. Victoria smiled at the table. The reality is that Troy's on a fixed income now, Social Security and a small pension. This house is becoming unaffordable. Complete fiction, but the table nodded sympathetically. Healthcare costs alone, Ashley added, are probably overwhelming. Medicare doesn't cover everything, Dr. Martinez agreed. Exactly. Victoria was gaining momentum, which is why families need to make difficult decisions. Sometimes love means accepting reality. What reality is that? I asked. Victoria's voice softened with fake compassion. Troy, dear, you can't afford to live independently anymore, and that's okay. There's no shame in needing help. The table fell silent. At your stage of life, she continued, after such a significant loss, it's natural to need more support. Professional supervision, structured environment. Professional supervision, like I was a child. The important thing, Ashley added, is that Troy understands we're doing this out of love. Doing what out of love? I asked. Helping you transition to appropriate care, Victoria said gently. You mean putting me in a nursing home. Assisted living, Victoria corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Of course. Assisted living is for people who need help but aren't sick. And you think I need help? Victoria looked around the table for support. Troy, you've been struggling. Everyone can see it. What has everyone seen? Confusion? Memory issues? Poor decision-making? Dr. Chen leaned forward. Mr. Walsh, are you experiencing memory problems? No. Difficulty with daily tasks? No. Financial stress? No. Victoria laughed nervously. Troy, denial is common in these situations. What situations? Age-related cognitive decline. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. The table was watching this exchange like a tennis match. Dr. Chen, Victoria said, in your professional opinion, what are the signs that someone needs assisted living? Dr. Chen looked uncomfortable. Well, that would require a proper assessment, but generally speaking, inability to manage medications, financial vulnerability, safety concerns, social isolation. Exactly. Victoria turned to me triumphantly. Troy exhibits several of those signs. Which signs? Financial vulnerability, for one. This house is beyond your means. How do you know what my means are? Troy, you don't have to pretend anymore. We know you're struggling financially. The entire dining room had gone quiet. Conversations at nearby tables had stopped. We also know, Ashley added, that grief has affected your judgment. It's completely understandable. My judgment seems fine to me. Does it? Victoria's voice carried across the room. Because making poor financial decisions, refusing help, and clinging to impossible situations suggests otherwise. Dr. Sterling finally intervened. Victoria, perhaps we should... Richard, someone needs to say this. Troy can't continue living in denial. Denial about what? About your limitations, about your situation, about the fact that you need help whether you want it or not. The room was completely silent now. Sometimes, Victoria announced to the entire dining room. Families have to make difficult decisions for people who can no longer make good decisions for themselves. That's when Margaret O'Brien walked in. And she wasn't alone. Margaret O'Brien entered the dining room like she owned it, which, in a way, she did. The Lakeside Medical Professionals Club had been built on land leased from Walsh Medical Technologies, a detail that was about to become relevant. She wore her best navy suit and carried a leather portfolio that I recognized immediately. The same portfolio she brought to board meetings when she had serious business to discuss. Behind her walked Dr. James Murphy, chairman of Riverside Medical Center's board of directors, my business partner for 20 years and one of my oldest friends. The dining room was still silent from Victoria's declaration about my limitations and poor decisions. Every eye in the room watched as Margaret approached our table. "Mr. Walsh," she said formally, "I apologize for interrupting your dinner, but we have some urgent matters to discuss." I stood to greet her. "Margaret, Dr. Murphy, what brings you here?" Victoria looked confused. "Troy, do you know these people?" "Margaret O'Brien is the director of Sunset Gardens," I said. "And Dr. Murphy serves on the hospital board." Dr. Sterling's face went pale. "Jim, what's going on?" Dr. Murphy's expression was grim. "Richard, we need to talk. All of us." Margaret opened her portfolio and withdrew a stack of documents. "Mr. Walsh, I received some disturbing information today. Apparently reservations have been made at our facility without your knowledge or consent." "What kind of reservations?" Dr. Chen asked. "A Mrs. Sterling called last week requesting to place Mr. Walsh in our assisted living program," Margaret continued. "She claimed to have his power of attorney." Victoria's face flushed. "I never said I had power of attorney. You said you were handling the arrangements," Margaret replied coolly. "Which implies legal authority." "I was just gathering information." "By making reservations for someone without their consent?" The table was riveted. Dr. Murphy stepped forward. "Troy, there seems to be some confusion about your circumstances." "What kind of confusion?" Ashley asked. "Well," Dr. Murphy glanced around the table, "your family appears to believe you're experiencing financial hardship." Victoria straightened defensively. "Troy's situation is private." "Actually," Margaret interjected, "when someone tries to place a person in our facility under false pretenses, it becomes our concern." "False pretenses?" Victoria's voice rose. Margaret consulted her documents. "You told our admissions coordinator that Mr. Walsh was struggling financially and needed immediate placement." "He is struggling." "Is he?" Dr. Murphy asked. "Because according to our records, Mr. Walsh is actually our facility's owner." The silence was deafening. Dr. Chen blinked. "Owner? Edward Walsh owns Sunset Gardens," Margaret confirmed. "He has for 15 years. Ashley's mouth fell open. "That's impossible." Margaret handed her a document. "Property deed, filed with the county in 2010. Walsh Medical Technologies purchased the land and built the facility as part of our healthcare services expansion." Victoria snatched the document. "This says Walsh Medical Technologies. That's not the same as—" "Edward Walsh is chairman and majority owner of Walsh Medical Technologies," Dr. Murphy announced to the room. The dinner conversation had completely stopped. Every table was listening. "That can't be right," Ashley whispered. Dr. Murphy withdrew another document. "Corporate filing with the Secretary of State. Edward Walsh, chairman and CEO, 51% ownership." "But he's just—" Victoria struggled for words. "Just what?" Margaret asked. "He's just a construction worker." "Was," I corrected. "I was a construction worker 40 years ago when I started the company." Dr. Sterling found his voice. "Troy, is this true?" "Completely true. But you never said—" "You never asked." Margaret continued her presentation. "Walsh Medical Technologies currently supplies equipment to 17 hospitals in 3 states, including Riverside Medical Center." Dr. Murphy nodded. "Our equipment contracts with Walsh Medical Technologies are worth approximately $89 million annually." Victoria was staring at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. "Dr. Sterling," Margaret said, "I believe your wife has been discussing Mr. Walsh's financial situation with several people." "What do you mean?" "She's been telling people that he can't afford to maintain his home. Is that accurate?" Dr. Sterling looked at Victoria, then at me. I don't know." "Mr. Walsh," Margaret asked formally, "do you have any difficulty affording your home?" "None whatsoever." In fact, Dr. Murphy added, according to our property management division, Mr. Walsh owns 12 properties in his neighborhood, including the one where Dr. and Mrs. Sterling currently reside. Victoria went white. What? Margaret consulted her papers. 447 Maple Street, purchased by Walsh Properties in 2019. Current tenants, Dr. Richard and Mrs. Victoria Sterling. We're not tenants, Victoria protested. We own that house. You own a mortgage, Margaret corrected. Walsh Properties owns the house. Ashley grabbed Victoria's arm. Mom, is this true? Dr. Sterling was doing mental calculations. Our mortgage company is Westfield Financial. Westfield Financial is a subsidiary of Walsh Properties, Dr. Murphy explained. The reality was sinking in around the table. Mrs. Sterling, Margaret continued, you've also been discussing Mr. Walsh's supposed inability to manage his finances. Well, I thought. What you thought was that a grieving widower was vulnerable and needed your guidance. I was trying to help. By placing him in a facility he owns? Dr. Chen started laughing. She couldn't help it. This is extraordinary. Margaret wasn't finished. Mr. Walsh, your family has also suggested that you need assistance with medical decisions. So I've heard. Are you currently under any doctor's care for cognitive issues? No. Memory problems? No. Any condition that would impair your judgment? None. Dr. Murphy addressed the room. I've worked with Troy Walsh for 20 years. His judgment built a company worth over $400 million. Ashley made a choking sound. 400 million? Dr. Chen repeated. Conservative estimate, Dr. Murphy confirmed. Victoria was clutching the property deed like a life preserver. But he lives so modestly. His clothes, his car, how I spend my money is my choice, I said quietly. Margaret smiled. Mr. Walsh is famously frugal. He still drives the same car he bought when the company went public. When did it go public? Ashley whispered. 1998, Dr. Murphy said. Troy's been a millionaire for 27 years. The room buzzed with whispered conversations. But why didn't you tell us? Daniel appeared at the table. He'd arrived late and caught the end of the conversation. Tell you what, son? About the money, about the companies, about everything. I looked at my son, then at his wife, then at Victoria, because I wanted to see what kind of people you'd become when you thought I was vulnerable. The words hung in the air. And what did you discover? Dr. Chen asked gently. I looked around the table, at Victoria, who'd plotted my institutionalization, at Ashley, who'd treated me like a burden, at Daniel, who'd abandoned our weekly coffee dates because his wife found me embarrassing. I discovered that respect isn't automatic, even in families, especially in families. Margaret closed her portfolio. Mr. Walsh, what would you like us to do about the unauthorized facility reservation? Cancel it. And the property leases? I looked directly at Victoria. I think some lease terms need to be renegotiated. Troy, Victoria said frantically, we can explain everything. I'm sure you can. Dr. Murphy checked his watch. Troy, should we discuss the hospital equipment contracts? What about them? Well, given tonight's conversation about your supposed cognitive decline, perhaps we should review whether Riverside Medical Center is the right partner for Walsh Medical Technologies. Dr. Sterling went completely pale. That might be wise, I agreed. Because respect, I'd learned, wasn't just about family dynamics. It was about business relationships, too. I didn't want revenge. I wanted respect. The next morning, I called Margaret O'Brien to my office at Walsh Medical Technologies. Not the modest apartment Victoria thought I lived in, but the corner office on the 42nd floor of the Walsh building downtown. Margaret, I need you to prepare 3 sets of documents. What kind of documents, Mr. Walsh? Property management notices, professional contract reviews, and family trust modifications. She understood immediately. How severe do you want the consequences? Proportional. I'm not trying to destroy anyone. I'm trying to establish boundaries. The first envelope was delivered to Dr. and Mrs. Sterling at 10 a.m. Victoria called me hysterical at 10:17 a.m. Troy, what is this? What is what, Victoria? This lease modification notice. It says our rent is increasing to market rate. That's correct. But we've been paying below market rate for 6 years. I know. That was my wedding gift to Daniel and Ashley. Wedding gift? I bought their house and allowed them to live there at a reduced rate, $2,000 monthly instead of $4,000 monthly. Silence.
Victoria, are you still there? You've been subsidizing us? For 6 years, 72 months, $144,000 in total. Why didn't you tell us? Because gifts shouldn't require gratitude performances.
But Troy, we can't afford $4,000 monthly. That's unfortunate. What are we supposed to do? I suggest you start by apologizing to your landlord. She hung up. The second envelope was delivered to Daniel at Riverside Medical Center at 2 p.m. He called me at 2:23 p.m. Dad, what's going on with the hospital contracts? What about them? Dr. Murphy says Walsh Medical Technologies is reviewing all partnerships for family stability factors. What does that mean? It means companies need to ensure their business relationships don't involve conflicts of interest. What conflicts of interest? When family members of hospital administrators try to institutionalize the company's CEO based on false information, it raises questions about the administrator's judgment. Dad, I had nothing to do with Mom Sterling's comments. Didn't you? Ashley thought maybe you needed help. Help with what? Living independently, managing finances, basic stuff. Basic stuff like deciding where I should live? We were worried about you. Were you worried, Daniel, or were you embarrassed? Long pause. Ashley said you didn't fit in with her family. And what did you say? I said maybe she had a point. The truth, finally. Daniel, do you know what your wife's family income is? Around $200,000 annually. Why? Do you know what mine is? I assumed maybe $60,000, Social Security and pension. Last year, Walsh Medical Technologies paid me $12 million in salary and dividends. I heard him sit down heavily. $12 million? Your wife's family makes $200,000. I make $12 million, and they thought I didn't fit in with them. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You assumed, based on my clothes and my car and my house. But why do you live so modestly if you have that much money? Because money isn't a costume, Daniel. It's a tool. I don't understand. I dress modestly because I don't need to impress anyone. I drive an old car because it runs perfectly. I live in the same house because your mother loved it there. Mom loved that house. She did. And now you want me to sell it so you can help Ashley's family feel more comfortable about my financial status. Dad, we made a mistake. Yes, you did. What can we do to fix it? You can start by remembering that family loyalty goes both ways. What do you mean? I've spent 6 years subsidizing your lifestyle without mentioning it. I've never asked for gratitude or recognition, but I also never expected to be treated like a burden when grief made me vulnerable. We'll talk to Ashley's family. We'll explain. The damage is done, Daniel. So what happens now? I looked out my office window at the city where I'd built my empire, block by block, deal by deal, over 4 decades. Now you choose. Choose what? Between your inheritance and your marriage. The line went quiet. Dad, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Ashley's family has spent 8 months planning my institutional care based on lies about my capabilities and finances. They've publicly humiliated me in front of medical professionals who depend on my business. They've treated my grief like a mental illness. But Dad, nothing. I'm 67 years old, Daniel. I'm healthy, wealthy, and competent, and I will not be treated like a burden by people who depend on my generosity for their lifestyle. What about Ashley? What about the baby? What about them? You'd cut off your own grandchild? The guilt card, of course. Daniel, your wife and her mother spent 8 months trying to cut me off from you. Turnabout is fair play. Dad, please. Can't we work this out? We can work it out when Ashley's family apologizes publicly for their lies about my mental state and financial condition. They'll never do that. Then you have your answer. I hung up and called Margaret. Margaret, prepare the final documents. The trust modifications. Yes, and Margaret, make sure the lawyers explain exactly what those modifications mean. Because if my family wanted to plan my future, they should probably understand what that future actually contained. And what it didn't. The consequences rippled through their world like stones in a pond. Dr. Sterling called me first, the day after the trust modification documents were delivered. Troy, we need to talk. About what, Richard? About what Victoria said at the dinner. About the equipment contracts. About everything. Richard was a good man caught in an impossible situation.
His wife had publicly questioned the mental competence of the person who controlled his hospital's most critical supplier relationships. What would you like to discuss? First, I want to apologize. Victoria spoke out of turn. She had no right to make those comments about your capabilities. Thank you, Richard. Second, I need to know if this affects our professional relationship. He meant the contracts. $89 million annually in medical equipment. The difference between Riverside Medical Center staying competitive or falling behind technologically. Richard, my business relationships are separate from my family relationships. Are they? Because my wife just spent 8 months trying to convince people that you're mentally incompetent. Yes, she did. And now she's received notice that her lease is being modified to market rate. Business is business. Troy, we can't afford market rate, not on my salary.
Then perhaps Victoria should have considered that before publicly questioning my judgment. Silence on the line. What do you want, Troy? I want an apology, public, in front of the same people who heard her accusations. She'll never agree to that. Then she'll be looking for a new place to live. The second call came from Ashley crying, Dad Walsh, please, you can't do this to us. Do what? Daniel told me about the trust changes, about the inheritance modifications. The trust modifications were simple. If Daniel remained married to Ashley without her family's public apology for their treatment of me, his inheritance would be reduced by 90%. The money would go to charity instead. The Catherine Walsh Memorial Foundation will make excellent use of those funds, I said. But what about our baby? What about Daniel's future? What about them? You're punishing an innocent child. No, I'm protecting myself from people who see me as a burden to be managed rather than a father to be respected. We never meant... Ashley, your mother made reservations to put me in a nursing home without my consent. She told medical professionals that I was mentally incompetent. She suggested that my grief had impaired my judgment. These weren't misunderstandings. These were deliberate attacks on my autonomy and dignity. She was worried about you. She was worried about her social status. That's not true, isn't it? She specifically mentioned that I didn't fit in with your family's lifestyle. She was embarrassed by my appearance at public events. She wanted me institutionalized so you wouldn't have to deal with an inconvenient father-in-law. Dad Walsh, I'm pregnant. Daniel and I need stability. Then you should have thought about that before joining your mother's campaign to declare me incompetent. The third call surprised me. It came from Dr. Chen. Mr. Walsh, this is Sarah Chen. We met at the country club dinner. Of course. How can I help you? I wanted to apologize for not speaking up that night. What Mrs. Sterling did was completely inappropriate. Thank you, Dr. Chen. I also wanted you to know that word has spread through the hospital about your companies, about the situation with your family. And people are choosing sides. Most of them are on yours. I don't need people to choose sides. Maybe not, but they're talking. About how Mrs. Sterling tried to manipulate a grieving widower. About how she made false claims about your mental state. About how she tried to use your vulnerability against you. What are they saying? That she's lost credibility. That her husband might be compromised professionally. That anyone who would treat family that way can't be trusted in professional situations. Social consequences. The most effective kind in a medical community where reputation meant everything. Dr. Chen, I appreciate you calling. Mr. Walsh, what your family did was wrong. But what you're doing now, standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, demanding respect, that's exactly right. After I hung up, I sat in Catherine's chair and thought about consequences. Victoria had wanted to control my future. Now she couldn't control her own. Ashley had wanted to manage my independence. Now her financial security was in question. Daniel had wanted to avoid difficult conversations. Now he faced the most difficult conversation of his life. And me? I wanted something simple. I wanted to grieve my wife without being treated like a burden. Was that too much to ask? 3 weeks later, Daniel came to the house alone. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, rumpled clothes, the appearance of a man who hadn't been sleeping. Dad, we need to talk. Come in, son. He sat in Catherine's chair without asking. I didn't object. Ashley moved back to her mother's house. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Really? I considered the question. I'm sorry that your marriage is in trouble. I'm not sorry that you're finally here without her. Dad, I've been thinking about what you said, about choosing. And I can't choose between my wife and my father. You already did choose, Daniel, 8 months ago. You chose Ashley's version of reality over your own eyes. You chose her family's comfort over your father's dignity. You chose their social status over our relationship. He was quiet for a long moment. You're right. About what? About all of it. We treated you terribly. I treated you terribly. Yes, you did. Can you forgive me? I looked at my son, 32 years old, about to be a father himself, finally understanding what family loyalty actually meant. Daniel, do you remember what your mother used to say about forgiveness? That it's not about forgetting. It's about choosing to move forward. That's right. I can forgive you, but moving forward requires new boundaries. What kind of boundaries? First, Ashley's family apologizes publicly for their lies about my mental state. Same people who heard their accusations need to hear their retraction. Victoria will never agree to that. Then Ashley can choose between her inheritance and her pride. What's the second boundary? You and I resume our weekly coffee meetings. No excuses, no cancellations for Ashley's schedule, no interruptions. Done. Third, when my grandchild is born, I want to be involved. Real involvement, not supervised visits when it's convenient for Ashley's family. Dad, about the baby. What about the baby? Ashley's been talking about naming him Edward. After you? I felt something crack open in my chest, something that had been frozen since Catherine's memorial service, even after everything that's happened. She says she understands now, about what we almost lost, about what you've done for us all these years without asking for credit. And Victoria? Victoria's been very quiet since she received the eviction notice. The notice was just a boundary, Daniel, not a punishment. I know. And Dad? I've been going to grief counseling. Good. The counselor says grief isn't something you get over. It's something you carry with you. Your mother would have liked that counselor. Will you come with me sometime? To a session? I nodded. I'd like that. He stood to leave, then stopped at the door. Dad, thank you. For what? For not giving up on me? After he left, I called Margaret. Margaret, cancel the eviction notice for 447 Maple Street. Yes, sir. Should I restore the original lease terms? Not yet. Let them pay market rate for 6 months. Then we'll reassess. And the trust modifications? Leave them in place. Some lessons need time to stick. Very good, sir. And Margaret? Prepare a new trust. For my grandchild, something Victoria Sterling can never touch. Because respect, I'd learned, wasn't just about the past. It was about protecting the future, too. If you've experienced family loyalty tested during difficult times, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes the people we love most need to learn that vulnerability doesn't mean powerless.